Good. So why don't we pass that around, and if anybody wants to actually be a party as opposed to just object tonight, you can indicate, make sure you give us your name and your contact information. Okay, so what we're going to do is after we get through the testimony, assuming we get through all the testimony tonight and all the evidence, the board will adjourn into an executive session, and we'll try to come up with some kind of decision as to whether we can make a decision tonight, or whether we need additional hearing time, or whether we need any additional time to make the decision. But we'll make that decision after we see how much we accomplish in tonight's hearing. So that said, there are 10 exhibits that we've pre-marked that I would like to introduce as board exhibits. So the first is proof of advertising in the Beaver County Times on 2 separate dates. That would be on 3/27 and on 4/3, March 27th and April 3rd, 2018, in the Beaver County Times. That's exhibit one, board exhibit number 1. Board exhibit number 2 are the letters of notification, which we are required to send to neighbors under the municipality's planning code, and we'll mark those as board exhibit number 2. Board exhibit number 3 is the notification, which we are required to send to the applicant. It's dated March 26, 2018, and it was sent to Mr. Sampson. We'll make that board exhibit 3. Board exhibit 4 are the photographs of the posting of the property with the notice of tonight's hearing. Again, a requirement of the municipality's planning code. We'll mark it board exhibit 4. Board exhibit 5 is a copy of the applicable sections of the township zoning ordinance, which are at issue tonight, as they pertain to conditional uses generally and conditional uses for a for a life care facility under Article 8 of the Aleppo Township zoning ordinance. And we'll mark that board exhibit 5. The application of Masonic for conditional use approval dated January 23rd, 2018. And we will mark that as board exhibit number 6. Board exhibit number 7 are the minutes from the Planning Commission meetings at which the Planning Commission considered preliminarily the application and made recommendations, which will also enter into the record here tonight. So the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting of March 7th, 2018 and February 7th, 2018 will be board exhibits, or board exhibit together 7. And board exhibit 8, as I just mentioned, is the actual recommendation from the Planning Commission with regard to the application. And that's board exhibit number 8. Board exhibit number 9 are the comment letters from the township engineer, Ben Gilberti, who's here tonight, and HRG, his engineering firm. And those comment letters are dated March 6th and February 6, 2018. Those will be marked as board exhibit number 9. And last but not least, the comments of the Allegheny County Department of Economic Development. And from the manager, our friend Kay Pierce. And those comments from the county will be marked as board exhibit number 10. And of course, any exhibits produced by any other parties or any other witnesses can be introduced also into the record. These are just the board exhibits that mostly relating to notification and procedural requirements that were required to undertake in order to satisfy the requirements of the municipality's planning code. So with that in mind, I think at this point we can open up the record.
Would you circulate those exhibits?
And Gwen, do you have a copy?
I have a copy.
Why don't you circulate the copies, because I'm going to hand these up as the original.
I don't have a packet like that. My file?
Okay.
It's not working.
All right, thank you.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So that said, we can call on the applicant to present their case, call any witnesses, introduce any exhibits that you wish. Again, reminding you that it's your burden to demonstrate compliance with the specific conditions of Section 400. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. As I said previously, my name is Donald Graham, law firm of Dillon McCandless, King, Coulter, and Graham, representing the Masonic Village. To continue with the housekeeping, we prefer our exhibits being letters.
Just to keep it straight, I think that's easier, yeah.
Okay. So Exhibit A, we would make the land development, the subdivision land development and conditional use applications that were filed with the township. Exhibit B would be the project narrative that was submitted with the application. Exhibit C would be the traffic impact assessment report from Gateway Engineering that was submitted. Exhibit D would be the Gateway Engineering post-construction stormwater management reports. Exhibit E would be the sewage exemption mailer package that was submitted. Exhibit F would be the lot consolidation plans. And Exhibit G would be the land development plans. There are 4 people with me this evening. Depending on where questions go, we may or may not call on everybody. We're going to have Jonathan Garzeski from Gateway Engineering doing most of the discussion, as he's the lead engineer on the project. We have Kyle Brown, who's also an engineer with Gateway Engineers, who's a traffic engineer. And then from the Masonic Village, we have Eric Stross and Patrick Stamsel. With that, I'm going to call Mr. Garzeski, and there is an exhibit that he's going to provide, which we'll label as Exhibit H, which is a summary of the ordinance requirements with respect to this particular conditional use.
Sir, would you spell your name, please?
Yes, it's Jonathan Garzeski, G as in George, A, R, C as in Charles, Z as in Zebra, E as in Edward, WSKI.
Thank you. And this document is what, exhibit what?
H.
Thank you.
H.
Section 5.11 also applied to this.
Pardon me?
Section 5.11 also apply to this?
5.11 would be what? What section?
It's a general provision related to conditional use.
Absolutely. But again, in terms of the burden, it's, the initial burden is to show compliance with the specifics. Then if there is a challenge on the grounds that it violates the general health, safety, welfare, that's the burden of the objector. So that's why we usually start in this order. But yes, it does apply.
Good evening, my name is Jonathan Gartensky. I'm with Gateway Engineers, professional engineer, project manager. With Gateway Engineers, on behalf of the applicant, I'm here to present plans. I've been with Gateway Engineers for 13 years, and I'm a graduate of Slippery Rock University and Youngstown State University, and professional engineering license in both the state of Pennsylvania and the state of Ohio. So first, I would just like to walk you all through the site plan. This is a colored rendering of the site plan that was provided within our exhibits, Exhibit G, that was already submitted to the township. This is just I'd just like to walk through the site layout, showing what the village is planning on doing on campus. And then from that, we'll work through Exhibit H, outline each of the characteristics within the use requirement. Outlined in paint are the 5 duplex buildings, which encompass 2 units per each building for a total of 10 new units being proposed for this development. This is located on the former Yankella property that was previously purchased by Masonic Villages. So just give you a little bit of an orientation. North is to the top of the page. Merriman Road is over here on the right-hand side, and then Redgate Road is located up here to the top of the page. And then Masonic Drive, which is a portion of the campus, is located on the bottom of the page. Access to this area of the property will be via a private driveway.
The residents can't see any.
Okay, so why don't we do this? If you could turn just slightly, thank you. Can the commissioner still see that now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Don't turn it too far.
Everybody still see it?
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I could see you.
Good. So the main access into the Swickley campus is off of Masonic Drive, which is located just off the page right here off of Merriman Road. Access to the new duplex units will be via this private road driveway. Coming off of Masonic Drive is outlined in green and stops just short of the end of the pink units. This is a full 2-way traffic access driveway to this point right here. And then this section of the circular cul-de-sac area will be 1-way traffic coming around to access these 2 rear units and then coming back around, coming back out towards Masonic Drive. The portion in orange, which connects to Redgate Road, is proposed as an emergency access point only. That will be grass in nature. However, the surface will be built utilizing a grass paved system so that it can withstand traffic for emergency personnel vehicles only. It will have the feel of being just a grass area coming along Redgate Road. However, in the need that it's required, it can be utilized by emergency vehicles coming in and out of the property. In order to control stormwater management for this proposed improvements, the existing stormwater facility was located right here, just to the below the existing parking lot, and it will be expanded in this area in blue to control all of the proposed runoff from the property site. So that was a brief general layout of proposed improvements. And with that, I would just like to move into the use requirements for the life care facility. Of section 400-54.0 the life care facility of the Aleppo Township zoning ordinance. The first item that is a requirement is the minimum site area being 40 acres. The property inclusive of the properties being consolidated is a total of 58 acres. So that requirement is met by Masonic Villages. Item number 2 is access to a site proposed for development of a continuing care retirement community shall be provided directly from a rural collector roadway. Secondary access shall be provided for emergency or maintenance services from a collector or local roadway. Masonic Drive is the main access point to the facility off of Merriman Road, which is a collector roadway. A secondary access off of Merriman Road is via Nancy Drive. Additionally, as part of this application, emergency access to Red Gate Road is being proposed. The third item for a life care facility is that the continuing care retirement community shall provide at least one type of residential use in addition to the extended care or nursing facility. The uses provided by Masonic Villages at the Sewickley campus include personal care, skilled nursing, and independent living. Item 4, the configuration of residential structures other than extended care or nursing facilities may include, but not be limited to, apartments, townhouses, which have a maximum of 6 dwelling units per structure, a duplex, a triplex, or quadruplex, which is single-family attached and single-family detached structures. The Sewickley campus has both townhouses and duplex single-family residential structures. Item number 5, the mix of residential uses may include the following categories with no group exceeding 75% of the total acreage. Item A, extended care nursing home. Masonic Villages has 128 extended care units, or 27% of their total. The assisted living units, Masonic Villages has 60 assisted living units, or 12% of their total. And the independent living units, multiple dwelling structures, there are 228 independent living units, multiple dwellings, or 49% of their total. And the independent living units, single family attached or detached, there are 54 living units attached or detached, and which is a total of 12% of their total. The item number 6, the requirement for senior life care facility is the maximum height of structures. The maximum height shall be 4 stories or 50 feet. Not to include architectural projections or roof-mounted equipment, and the structures on Sewickley campus meet this requirement. Item number 7, all roof-mounted equipment shall be screened from view from adjacent residential properties and roadways. Such screening shall blend into the architectural design of the building. Again, the Masonic Villages campus structures in Sewickley campus meet this requirement. Item number 8. The maximum permitted gross density shall be calculated separately by residential unit type as follows. Item A, extended care units, the nursing home shall not to exceed a ratio of 20 beds per acre of land. The Masonic Village's property is approximately 58 acres, so they would be permitted 1,160 beds for extended care. The Sewickley campus has 128. Assisted living units, not to exceed a ratio of 20 beds per acre of land. Again, the property is 58 acres, so the Masonic Villages would be permitted 1,160 assisted living units. Again, the campus has 60. Independent living units or multiple dwelling structures, not to exceed a ratio of 12 dwelling units per acre of land. Again, the property being 58 acres. Masonic Villages would be permitted to have 696 independent living units via a multiple dwelling structure, and the Sewickley campus has 228. Independent living units, single family detached, not to exceed 4 dwelling units per acre of land. The property is 58 acres. They would be permitted 232, and the Sewickley campus has 54 attached, and that's all inclusive of the 10 single-family duplex units being proposed today. A minimum, item number 9, A minimum of 20% of the site area shall be designated as active or passive open space within which recreational facilities shall be including but not limited to a picnic area or walking trail may be provided. The Sewickley campus has 38.8 acres or 66.9% of the property as open space with multiple locations of walking trails and outside patios. Item number 10 of the life care facility is that no structure shall be situated less than 40 feet from the property line. And again, this Sewickley campus meets this requirement. Item number 11. Personal support services shall be limited to 10% of the total floor area of principal structures. The structures within the Sewickley campus meet this requirement. Buffer yards shall comply with section 400-32 of the zoning ordinance. The buffer yards within the Sewickley campus meet this requirement. Item number 13. Required parking shall consist of one space for each independent living unit on site, plus one space for each 2 employees on the largest shift, plus one space, for each 4 beds in extended care and assisted living facilities for visitor parking. I have this broken into 3 categories to discuss each of these use requirements. Item I, the independent living units equals 282, which would require 282 parking spaces. The item 2, the maximum employees on peak shift is 150, so that would require 75 parking spaces. And item 3, the extended care and assisted living units equals 188, which requires a total of 47 spaces. That requirement is 404 parking spaces total, and Masonic Villages has a total parking space count of 521 parking spaces, including the 10 proposed with this plan. Item number 14, interior streets and roadways shall be designed and construction to accommodate a vehicular capacity of 400 average weekday vehicles trips or a minimum of 12-foot lane width, whichever is greater. The interior streets within Sewickley campus have lanes that are 12 feet in width to meet this requirement. And item number 15 is compliance with provisions of Part 5, Section 400-23. Conditional uses shall receive final approval for continuing care retirement community in the zoning district, and the Sewickley campus meets this requirements.
Jonathan, just a couple things to be clear. On number 5 there, when you broke down the percentage of each, the number of units for the village, in terms of acreage, no use exceeds 75% of the total acreage, correct?
That's correct.
In fact, that 66.9% of the site is open space, so only 34.1% is being used for physical structures.
That is correct.
With respect to the roof-mounted equipment, there is no roof-mounted equipment on any of the duplexes that are being constructed in this phase, is there?
That's correct.
And can you tell me what the closest distance is to the property line of any of the 4 or 5 new buildings that are being constructed?
Yes, on the side it has 3 proposed units. The one in the middle, closest proximity to the property line is 42.32 feet, which exceeds the 40-foot requirement.
And into the record was some review letters from HRG with respect to the conditional use, the subdivision plan, and the land development plan. Have all the comments that were raised in those letters been addressed?
Yes, they have.
That's all the questions that I have.
Before we go to the next witness, since Commissioner Dara has raised a question concerning the general requirements that have to be met under the ordinance, which is section 5.11, while it is the burden of the objector to demonstrate with hard evidence that those requirements are not being met, I think just to keep things moving, it might not be a bad idea. If you have some evidence to present regarding those, it might be a good idea to do it now.
Anybody have a copy of the zoning ordinance?
Yeah. I need it back.
Okay, we're right back.
511 are the general condition.
So, an application has been submitted to the township as required by the general requirements.
Yes.
And you've provided a chart in your testimony indicates that all of the specific criteria that are required for a life care community have been met on this particular project. These 5 additional duplexes, a total of 10 units, will they endanger the public health, safety, or welfare in any way?
It will not.
Will this addition of 10 units deteriorate the environment or generate nuisance conditions such as traffic congestion, noise, dust, smoke, fire, and vibration?
It will not.
In fact, you did a traffic impact analysis at your company, did you not?
That's correct. Yeah.
The peak hour impact from this project was 1 trip, is that correct?
That is correct.
With respect to the subdivision plan and the land development plans that are being submitted, there are no modifications or waivers being requested with either of those plans.
That is correct.
So they comply in all respects with the township ordinance.
It does.
In your professional opinion, is this an appropriate use on the proposed site?
It is.
Is it consistent with the comprehensive plan?
It is.
And is it in general conformity, and is it compatible use in the neighborhood?
It is.
Is it a logical extension of the existing sign village that's already there and operating in accordance with the ordinance?
It is.
Thank you. I guess we could do it this way. Does the board have any questions of the witness? Well, should we take the next, should we do all the witnesses and then come back? How
Why
would
don't we
you?
do all the witnesses and then come back?
Let's do it all, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, next witness then.
Unless you have questions that raise issues,
That's it?
that's it.
You'll rest.
We'll rest.
Okay, well then I guess it's appropriate to turn it over to the board for questions. So why don't we just go around, starting with Commissioner Duplaga?
I wanted you to discuss screening with the landscaping and how visually the surrounding neighborhood may or may not be impacted by that. And then I have another question.
Absolutely. So this is the landscape plan, which is included within the exhibits that were already entered in the record. The landscape plan is sheet L101 of the land development plan set. So this plan depicts the required buffer plantings per code. The code requirement is for a 10-foot wide perimeter buffer to be installed in the areas of proposed improvements. This 10-foot buffer consists of evergreen trees and shrubs to be installed at maximum of 6 foot and 24 inches. 6 foot heights for the evergreen trees and 24 inches for the height requirement of the structure to be installed. That buffer is a buffer from the northern property line along Red Gate Road down and along to the proposed improvements of the property corner, and the use of existing plantings is completed there. And again, that is the same on the opposite side from Red Gate Road down and along the proposed improvements and wrapping the corner, tying into the rest of the buffer on the campus.
So you think there'll be effective screening for the neighbors if they don't want to have the view of once it's grown out?
Again, it's installed meeting the minimum requirements for the proposed use versus the existing adjacent property.
Okay, and from the main road, what is the requirement for the main road? It's just that the gap around the.
Oh, the gap right here?
Yeah, that's because you have the exit.
That's the emergency exit, and then the clear sight triangle in the event anybody needs to use this access, looking in both directions to be able to exit the property. The landscaping cannot impede in that triangle.
Okay, and is it a geotextile fabric you're putting down or material, sorry, for the emergency exit?
Yes, so the emergency access will be comprised of a grass paved system, which is a plastic cell system below a engineered subgrade. The cell system will be filled in with topsoil and seeding, so that'll be grass in nature.
So that'll be like mowed and like kept short, it'll be like.
It'll look have the same fill and presence as being a grassed area along the entire frontage of Red Gate.
And how do you handle that in winter, that grassy surface if a fire truck needs to go in?
In the event that a fire truck would need to go in here, it'll be properly delineated to show the path of the proposed access.
Okay, that's all I have.
Addressing some potential problems down the road. I assume that these units would increase Masonic Village's sewage discharge into the Aleppo system.
Yes.
Since there's a lawsuit pending by Masonic Village against the township and the authority seeking lower sewage rates for Masonic Village, how is it in the best interest of the public generally to allow an increase in sewage when that would potentially increase what the taxpayers would have to subsidize?
Well, first off, let me say, the lawsuit involves the rate charged. And that lawsuit is the lawsuit. It really has nothing to do with today's application.
Well,
These buildings will be required to pay whatever the applicable rate is.
so they'll be outside and won't be added into the lawsuit.
Well, the lawsuit's going to affect the ultimate rate that is established, or the correct rate that's permitted to be charged by the authority. These would follow suit with it, but in the interim, they're going to pay whatever rate.
Well, I understand in the interim, but I'm worried about it down the road if there's an adverse determination. If we make an affirmative decision here, we're adding to the potential burden of the other ratepayers.
It wouldn't, well, let me back up and say, if the litigation were determined unfavorably to the authority, then it would merely be apportioning the cost appropriately. It wouldn't be burdening anybody with something that they shouldn't have been burdened with to begin with.
Well,
The litigation is going to establish what the appropriate rate is that should be charged.
these applications are going to take this property off the tax rolls, correct?
That's correct, but as you know, there's a pilot in place for this project.
It's not a long-term pilot at this point. It's got
another 7 years.
okay. But when your chairman was here with the children's home application several months ago, at least I thought I heard him say that he was opposed to any further pilot. My question is that actually your position?
Well, I guess there's a pilot in place today. We're going to abide by the pilot. I think that pilot has a mechanism that requires us to negotiate an adjustment based upon the addition of units into this plan. We would abide by the obligations in that pilot to negotiate the appropriate payment for these additional units.
The pilot addresses the addition of units, but the pilot doesn't address what happens after that pilot expires.
It does not.
But these units are going to be here long after that pilot expires.
That is correct.
And so at that point, my question is it actually the Masonic Village's position that they will not be interested in entering into another pilot?
I don't think we're prepared to address that tonight.
Well, I think you ought to get us an answer before we vote.
Okay. So you're saying that if we did not agree to extend the pilot, that you would not?
I'm saying it's information we need to know. That's all I have.
This is the same area of land that was considered for the children's home, correct?
Correct.
So when the children's home application was withdrawn, I was left a little uncertain as to whether or not that application would be resubmitted. Does this plan effectively kill the children's home application?
I can't say it kills that application. It certainly would eliminate that application in this area where these buildings are going. this area would not be used for the children's home.
Is there another portion of Masonic Village's land that's being considered for the children's home?
We have looked at other alternatives, but no decision has been made as to whether or not we will resubmit it, or if we did resubmit it, where it would be. But obviously, if we did that, that would have to come back to this board for consideration. But as I said, this property would be out of consideration for that because obviously we would have put it in play for these duplexes.
With Trump. I don't have anything else for now.
Nothing here. Nothing here.
So you've rested your case? You're gonna,
I mean, I guess when you say rested,
I know,
I need to hear what somebody else has to say as to whether I need to put anything else.
sure, I understand. But you're not calling any additional
Not
witnesses
at
at
this
this time?
Correct.
Okay. So that said, is there anybody here who plans to testify as an objector to the application?
I think I do have a comment. I'm not sure it is an objection. My name is Bud Smith. I live at 775 Red Cave Road. I want to say, first of all, to everyone here, I've been dealing with Masons now for 17 years, moved into our house. I find them people you can trust. I find them concerned. And I find that everything that I've dealt with in terms of floods from their property down to mine, construction problems, discussions of our property and their property, I have found that the Masons constantly do more than they say they're going to do. I wanted to put that framework on the table before I begin to ask any questions. But I think we're dealing with a good organization, a good bunch of people. My question is this: Can you demonstrate the requirement for the emergency exit on the Red Cave Road? The requirement? Yes. Can you demonstrate that that's required? Or is that your opinion as an engineer?
The canvas itself provides 2 access points meeting the code requirement for the life care facility. The emergency access was provided in the event additional access would be needed to these 10 units right here in the event access from this point forward or that way they cannot gain entry or exit of the property. So this provides a relief valve in the event it would be absolutely necessary.
The reason I'm raising the question really deals with Red Cave Road, some of the problems, the accidents, the traffic we have along there. As a professional engineer myself, I don't understand why you need more than the 2 entrances you have. Certainly, it's an interesting idea, but I think we all know that what's going to happen is that if that's simply a piece of grass that's going underneath, that will be used for egress. Unless you put a fence across that, and that's going to be just more burden and traffic on Red Cave Road than we can handle. So I'm concerned about casual access. I'm concerned about the parking that will happen along there. And I have seen in my lifetime that when these are built, they're abused. No fault of the masons, no fault of construction, it's just human nature. I question the need for that emergency access. Would you like to comment on that, Jim?
Yeah, I guess what we would say is we viewed the ordinance as potentially requiring it for this particular project.
Does it require it or does it not require it?
That's a good question.
I don't think it does.
That's a good question, and I guess I would state for the record that if the board determined that that was not necessary, we don't have any problem with taking it off the plan.
Well, I would leave this to the board to consider this. If it's required, it's required. I don't believe it is required. So it's a question of judgment from the board and from the population as to whether or not we want to take that risk of abuse of a piece of abuse of an access that could in fact be used for casual use.
Well, can you show us on what you have up there where the 2 access points would be if you eliminate this emergency area?
The two access points to the overall campus is the main access Masonic Drive on the Merriman, and then Nancy Drive on the Merriman as well. So those are the two access points to the campus.
The existing.
The existing access points, yes.
And you're citing as your authority for those 2 points, this exhibit H, paragraph 2?
Yes.
I think the plans would show it as well, right? We pulled out the entire set of plans.
But I'm saying to answer the resident's question, where does it say that you need to have the access that you need to
It's in
have?
the, it's in the code.
That's correct.
That's what I'm saying. That's what we're saying at H.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Question, is Nancy Drive wide enough and substantial enough to take heavy equipment? Like fire trucks?
I don't know that.
I believe Nancy Drive, during the original development, was designated as an emergency access, and that's why the cable is across it, because it's not used for general access. There's also the third driveway as well, our second entrance. So in reality, there's 3 points of access to the campus along Merriman Road.
Let me make sure, does the court reporter have the names of all the witnesses? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
The traffic study, what the gentleman brought up, is it broken down to an impact on that side versus Merriman, or probably not that? I mean, if you weren't considering that, probably wasn't included in the traffic study.
Right, that wasn't used as an access point for normal traffic.
So we don't have a point of reference really to debate your point on that.
If you look at the emergency access to the rest of the villas that go up the hill, they're certainly further away from any access than what we're talking here. So I don't believe that there is a credible argument that it's required, because the situation here with the existing accesses that you have is better than the access that exists now with the structures that you now have. My sole objection is what I have seen in the past, and maybe others have seen, that once these are built, they're used for casual access, and that's going to create another serious problem for Redgate Road.
If there's a chain across Nancy Drive, which there happens to be, wouldn't it be also required for a chain or a fence or some obstruction on the access to Redgate?
I don't believe that's necessarily a requirement by municipal standards, but to control the access on campus, Masonic Villages would install one.
Just, you might ask the township engineer if he has any comment with respect to the emergency access issue.
I don't think I have any comment. It is a typical practice to, provide 2 access points specifically if for some reason the intersection were to become blocked. That does allow access into the back. We did review the proposed engineered surface for the emergency access for the plans, and the manufacturer provided on the plan. It did meet the requirements to support a fire truck.
Yeah, I hate to say this since Joe Murphy's not here to defend himself, but I recall clearly in his first or second presentation that the access road onto Redgate was going to be blocked.
That's what I heard as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned a chain or other type of barrier.
And I think, as Jonathan said, we have no problem putting some type of mechanism on to block it. That's fine.
And that would satisfy my requirement as well. I'm just concerned about the casual use of that.
You would be satisfied by a chain.
Yes, if the chain is such that people can't casually go around or do whatnot, I would be satisfied.
And then with the chain at Nancy Drive, or with this chain that we're contemplating now, is the idea just that if a fire truck needs to go through there, it just blows through it?
What's that? They would either blow through it or would provide a key so they can.
Typically, we have provided the fire department with access keys or what they call a Knox box somewhere that they have access to it, so that they can get access and take the chain down. And that's something that we would be more than willing to do in this case.
Sure.
Thank you for hearing my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to be heard with regard to the application? Okay, hearing none oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Please.
I thought there would be other people that wanted to speak. I'm not feeling well, so I'm not going to stand up. My name is Kathy Davidson. I live very, very close to the property in question. And it's nice to hear from all the experts here, none of whom live in the area, or probably driven up and down Red Gate, or seen the Masonic Village employees speed by, throw litter out of their cars every day. The Masonic Village, in my opinion, is detrimental to the health and safety of my neighborhood. I've nearly been run over twice now by Masonic Village employees, had to call the police. I regularly get litter thrown in my front yard, and it is definitely Masonic employees. It coincides with the shift changes and all that stuff. In addition, the lights from this Masonic Village, we are a little residential neighborhood, and I have clearing lights in my backyard, which is my understanding is supposed to be screening, so that didn't happen. That occurs regularly. Redgate Road is a community of people who want to live in a rural, peaceful neighborhood. Every house on Redgate has at least half an acre with one home per lot going the entire way down Redgate Road. So I'm not really sure how putting 10 townhomes on one lot where there used to be a single home is consistent with a rural residential neighborhood. I also want to bring up that even though it's a conditional use, that can still be considered spot zoning, because that piece of property is treated differently from the rest of the entire road. So you have all one home residential lots with large pieces of property, and then you're going to put 10 so-called villas on what was one residential lot. I also want to point out our sewage burdens have gone up, what, 80%? Some ridiculous amount in the past few years on the water bills. Our zoning code and the comprehensive plan state that all the commissioners are to maximize tax revenue. Letting a nonprofit entity put 10 homes that will not be taxed, and that we will also have to subsidize with our earnings, earned income tax, our real estate taxes, in my opinion, does not fit in with that comprehensive plan or the goals of our municipality. We need tax revenue, and this is taking more away from the township and putting on a few of us who are working and not retired who have to pay for it. So I guess I'm just hoping that some weight will be given to those of us who live on Redgate instead of having the Masonic Village come in and make it into a city, of townhomes. That's not what we want to see. It's not what it looks like. It doesn't fit in. And, Redgate Road is ready to fall in at the bottom. Any more traffic, it's breaking point. There really shouldn't be any more to that. And that's all I really want to say.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment, either for or against? Okay, hearing none, or seeing none, I think we can close the record at this point and excuse ourselves into an executive session and see whether we're in a position to make a decision tonight.
Okay, now just as a matter of housekeeping here, I'm going to keep the video running, but I'm going to mute the camera and the microphone. So anybody who's watching at home or viewers that are on at home, we're going to be pausing the video, but we'll come back when we come out of executive session.
I think you should explain the reason for the executive session to people.
We can do the reason for the executive session is that I will be instructing the Board of Commissioners on the relevant legal points that they need to consider in rendering a decision. Before I forget. Huh?
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're going to our little
Yeah, and actually, in reality, it'll be less than that.
Oh, yes. I didn't break it. That's why I'm asking.
It's nice of you to say that about me.
I spent a lot of time. Okay. My biggest concern is gonna be, I keep my road, and I don't know how much you guys see in my house, but we literally have a pastor back there. I can't have it. You gotta take. That's probably my biggest. I understand. I'm looking for really kind of tough. But still, if they should. If you go. Parking lot. That one. Then you park. If you look at that all comes right from. And they're kind of fast. Used to be over here. Right there. So I mean, I'm like right. I own both of them.
If they try this.
For the new one, for the existing one, we're still
Because like, the more you can do, the better off. Yeah, got it. So, this is the puzzle line. It's over here. It's not.
Correct. Yes, it's away.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Chemical here.
Here.
Take out here.
This is the house that was torn down there.
Yeah, that's good.
Yes, Fishes, yes, so you could be. Sure. Okay, yeah, this is your name, so your house is somewhere in this vicinity right here.
What is this? This is your property line.
Yeah, that's what.
And this is your Fish's house.
Fishes house is actually sitting right here. It would be sitting right there. Yes, further back, way off.
I understand. We do have a lot of traffic in front of my house. In the parking lot. Yeah, oh yeah, I did.
Oh, no, I know.
One right across the street here. Everything else.
And then it started working. That's part of the problem, is it's not being active, it's like getting.
Yeah, why is this doing this? She said, well, shut, she says, it's not gonna help you know because you're hearing. She says, you try shutting it down, but it started Sunday morning. Nice when they- Technology's nice when it's on. It doesn't. Someone saw them and brought their.
So you might find yourself just. Just to catch something. That was it's like but it starts with, well, it would start with us having
That's what's there today. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, they're going to be awareness library.
Probably on the backside of that.
Percentage, it's like living, you need X amount of acres. It's qualified for 200. If you're putting in trees, you need X amount. So I get that. So they're just talking about the total acre. So wouldn't you? Oh, yeah, okay. So when you chose,
No.
okay. So as you can see, that land is still allowing Sure, yeah, thank you. So this retention pond doesn't exist.
So just below this parking lot.
So where does the
So the existing one is right
So there's two different devices, you start with the traffic counter. So it's just a receipt. Everyone had a radar. Once you start watching, radar flashes.
And then we got 20 new those they better have money much. So have you heard shotgun bell?
And where's it going?
I'm gonna have after I torture him. They got a new wall, and one wall. Yeah, because I went down there and I was yeah, I called him that. And I said, how many chickens do you have? Three. No.
Some places.
It's like literally, it's bigger than this row. Yeah, like my grandmother would all have my doctor. Yeah. We got a track.
Actually, I'd like to see just because of the work down. I just remember as a kid, I used to always build like small Montreal Canadian. That's all right.
From your house, that, they have. Wherever they are, when you get there. Because I'm looking in my yard. So I'm trying to keep them on the other street. And they won't bring the dogs a lot. Even the moms who all had babies that come along. He's got like Cheerios. Yeah, bring a bag with you. Yeah, just bring it. They're born and 6 hours later, they're jumping around like I know. They are so cute. And they're so friendly.
Oh, really?
They got a big water and now they actually, my see, they don't eat grass. They eat shrubs. They love poison ivy. They love poison ivy. Yeah.
Doesn't hurt. No, it doesn't hurt. Really, way I can describe it is it's a really thin, flexible metal.
They do. I have, well, still, they killed 8 of them the other night. I had all the babies, I could my bunny catch. They pushed on the wire light. They didn't touch the bunny, but they all jumped out. Right now I have 22. And then I'm going to get more tomorrow. Because my chickens are getting, they only lay eggs for like 3 or 4 years. And they all start growing up. So I have to. Yeah. We went just the other day. That's where I'm gonna go. I get one Tractor Supply, but they call my baby. My husband had 6 days last night. Now I'm using I want them now. You know what? And the eggs you can't beat. I mean, you cannot buy eggs when you get out of that. Especially when there's an egg there. Even if you go online, eggs, they're not like big in my Owen was up the other day. We have an incubator on some eggs there. Yeah. I don't want to. 2 days later, that's showed the pick up school. You think we go, sometimes I smashed the eggs before. The eggs in my phone. And smashed the eggs. They have their little baskets and they go off. See, and that's what. I had to back, I never traveled much.
Why?
Little ones, the baby. All right, so video showed them
Right,
how
yeah.
the little baby.
There might be a little thing here and there.
Emily could run over, run with them.
Right.
I'm ready, I am ready. The mother had to fly. No, I'm ready. What do you think? I feel like it's just.
Right, it doesn't mean it's. Right, that's the beginning.
I just asked to see if he, I'm pretty sure I have. Yeah, but again, never been asked and I've never seen it. If it is, we should find out. Yeah, that was my follow-up question.
Wednesday. Oh, Wednesday. Okay, that's right.
No, you didn't.
Right here.
Where are you going?
Okay, are we on here? No.
All right, we're back on the record. We are recording and broadcasting again.
I think let the record show that we are back in the hearing. And we held an executive session during the course of the executive. Purpose for the executive session was for me to instruct the board on legal matters pertaining to their decision. One of the things we talked about was the requirements under the municipality's planning code for deliberation and for rendering a decision. The code does allow us 45 days after the record is closed within which to make a decision. The board decided tonight that they wish to exercise their right to take 45 days. And what they're going to do instead, though, is entertain this matter at their next legislative meeting, which is less than the 45 days, which would be, I'm sorry, Gwen, what date did you say?
May 21st.
So the legislative meeting, at the legislative meeting on May 21st, this will be on the agenda. and the board will be prepared to make a decision and vote at that time.
So are we gonna formally close the public hearing tonight to start that 45-day clock?
Well, we can close the hearing tonight. The record, as I said, the record is closed and the decision will be made within the 45 days. And to the extent I may need some additional time after that to do findings and conclusions, I'll probably ask that you waive the deadline for, or extend the deadline further to allow me the time to do that.
Okay.
But I don't think we have to address that tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. We're gonna exit stage right.
Right, so that ends the hearing on the zoning issue. We have yet a full legislative meeting to take care of. So if anybody else wants to depart quietly, please do so. We'll take just a 30-second break to let people out.
When, what was the date?
Excuse.
Bye.
May 21st.
It's on. It's on.
Don't forget to chew us on the microphone. All right, let's come to order, please. Let's turn to our public safety and police report, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Chief.
It's long night, huh? Long day, long night.
Yep.
Before I go into this, my report, I'd like to take a moment to tell you all that I've chosen to go on to greener pastures, and after 35 years of doing this job, I'm going to retire. And my last day will be May 11th. And so it's been an honor and a privilege to work with this board and the previous board. Aleppo Township is a shining star. We actually enjoy doing the service. It's a nice place. I recommend it to people when they come to the area. Where should we go? Quickly Hill, Township, Aleppo is one of the places I tend to push. With that said, the Board of Supervisors of Ryan Township has chosen my replacement, and I'd like to introduce you to him. It's Joe Haney, and Joe's been with us 23 years. He's our lead investigator. Some of you have met him for other cases that he's worked. He's, along with having 23 years with us, he's also did several tours in Iraq, all through Central America. He's how many years were they in the military? 21 years with the U.S. Army. Joe's wife is a school teacher in the Avalon School District. He has two young boys that keep him busy, and he's got a commitment to the community. And along with that, I think he's going to be a good replacement. And this is Joe.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for again, thank you very much. It's passed along. Chief Miklos has been my mentor for 20 years here. I have the same mentality that he does. I was just looking to enhance what he's already started here. With the level up and all the other communities that we serve. No more, whatever you would need from me, just ask and make it happen. Thank you.
With that said, my report for the month of March 2018 follows. We have 3 alarms. We did have a burglary report, and rather maybe it is a pretty interesting investigation. I'm going to allow Joe to give you a little synopsis of what happened, and because he worked with him and Ryan came together. I think I can explain what happened with this case.
Try to surmise quickly.
So we recall to Masonic Village for report of burglaries within the apartment complex there. One thing led to another. We had several apartments that were entered with items missing from at least one, if not both of those apartments. Luckily, the residents got a good look at the person that was committing the act, because the resident came home during the incident in front of the gentleman, acted as a maintenance person. Like he was looking for water leaks and whatnot, and then exited the apartment and left. So with that information that we had, the case took its own turn. We started looking for locals or recent fired employees, the normal kind of thing that we would look at this case. However, that wasn't what we had. Fortunately, the actor, we believe that there was one, that might be two, entered and took credit cards in addition to other personal items. They used a credit card at a local gas station. And we worked with the police department from there. We had access to the cameras, the intersections there, license plate readers and cameras. And after getting the first car, wasn't the right car, we got partial plate on a second car. And it turned out to be a rental from an enterprise rental in Washington, D.C. So that could have come over here at anybody. We were able to speak with enterprise rental car, determine who rented that vehicle. Now that doesn't necessarily mean at the time that the person was the burglary. We still had to link them to this. So from there, we continued working backwards, meaning credit card charges that were made. They did use another person's credit card to go purchase about $2,000 worth of iPads from Apple store down in Shadyside. So we went down there, we were able to capture camera footage. From that, we were able to marry it up to the picture of that person and the picture who did rent the car. So after all this was done, and it was quite a long process, we were able to backtrack the car and where it started from, where it came to. The gentleman rented the car in Washington, D.C., drove immediately out here off the Monroeville exit, and proceeded to different towns, tracing through different camera systems, and put up the words to the county. Now, doing a background on this gentleman, he is a professional at what he does. I never would have guessed that it happened here. The guy is a very extensive criminal history, and after doing this job for 24 years, extensive is extensive. He was hunted by U.S. Marshals over a 5-state radius back in 2010. Or excuse me, a little bit before that, he was finally caught in 2010 and did 5 years of doing this exact same thing. He, not just himself, but along with other people who go into nursing care homes, commit these burglaries, take the jewelry and whatever else is done to unknown locations and sell them. Currently, we've been able to garner enough information, submit charges on a felony charge against them, and have an extradited in 140 Washington. So basically what that means is we've already sent him down to Washington, D.C. Metro Police, waiting for him to hopefully get back. As we have just received word that he is now still out doing this exact same thing, running another car from enterprise rental, and he is out in New England states doing it, as we were contacted last week by another agency regarding this gentleman. We have a warrant for his arrest in the system. They were finally able to determine who this guy was. Long and short of it, it was a very long case to try to get to, but we did. We have a warrant for the gentleman, and eventually we'll get brought back to Allegheny County. We'll look into question him further and hopefully be prosecuted to the full extent for what he did here. So that surmises the case. A little bit longer, but it was a long case.
You're going to miss that stuff.
And
honestly, Dan, it's so much more interesting now with these cameras and electronic stuff that they're able to access. I mean, they're putting these guys in places, and with these cameras, you got a plate, you got a car, I'll tell you where you're at just about anywhere in the country. Wow. It's pretty amazing. But a great case, and these guys worked hard at it, and that's just, you know, you don't often get to really understand what a lot of things that you do, but they're out there, they're working these cases. And, something we have the luxury to have that within our abilities, where a lot of smaller agencies can't do some of these things, and these cases just don't get solved. It takes a lot of effort. Once you get on with it, you gotta stay on.
This was how many incidents in Aleppo? Two.
But this guy,
He was at that facility for a lot longer than what,
what we have found, sometimes people are don't report things for whatever reason, embarrassment, they just don't notice it. The last time you just don't go into those areas and pick it up, and you hear somebody's gonna go, where did that go?
And was Masonic aware of his entry and exit?
So when the residents made Masonic aware, because again, he posted as a maintenance worker, so, it took the resident a little bit of time, well, this just doesn't seem right, I mean, he did good at what he was doing, and he was dressed in like blue overalls and whatnot. But she finally reached out and they're like, no, we really don't. And then the other residents realized there's something missing, and then it kind of flowed from there. So I think it was excellent work with many times. They've taken cautionary measures to help us out tremendously during this case. But they were aware shortly thereafter.
There's no allegations of violence in any of this, are there? Is there anything we can be doing to prevent this or anything similar to it in the future?
Occasionally you just get these people that just make a living. Obviously, this is what this guy does. He knows he can do it with places and blend in. And they're busy places, people moving around all the time. The security up there is good, really good. But it's just people, especially older people, are trusting. They have everybody walking around that facility should be there. They have no reason to question it.
Well, I can't tell you, Chief, the security up there is getting a whole hell of a lot better because the residents up there were frightened, mad, a lot of other acronyms. And they're updating their camera system for every access on the entire campus.
That's everything. The camera, that's just.
So it was a wake-up call.
Further in my report, the fraud case, this is the usual IRS case where people get called by the IRS and they notify us, but it's very common. Abandoned vehicle, this one was on Timber Lane. Spoke to the owner, 30 days to comply with. Circumstances, 60 more. They thought someone was picking someone's mail, but someone asked someone to pick the mail, disabled vehicle, stuck in the ice. Hazardous condition, we have several of them, the road department closed up on the call-outs, several of those. This is the winter, it's never gonna end. Vehicle lockouts, and a lady up in Timber Lane, what keys in the car was and another suspicious about it. This was that car that we were called about. They thought someone was going to be living in the vehicle. We checked it out. There's some issues there with residents and people living in the house. Looks like they may have been staying in the vehicle, but we believe the vehicle is actually Swiftly Heights. Someone told me tonight that they think they moved the car out maybe in Aleppo. We'll check it out, see what's going on. Handled the usual complaints, hit deer, raccoon, and another raccoon. Traffic accidents, deer in front of the car, and welfare checks. That's my report. And time I'm able to do that.
All the best.
Appreciate it.
Come back and visit.
I'll be all right.
Thanks for your service, Chief.
That's it.
Anything else?
Good luck.
Okay. Call me.
Sure.
All right.
Are they still gonna invite you to the LGA?
They want somebody to hit me.
All right, emergency management. Public Works.
Cleaned up after those live daily. And put the new sign up there, right, just highways, took it out. And, I put a new one on waterworks also. Situation. And, fixed the plow frame on truck 57. Took the spreaders out of the truck, took the spreader back into there just to see.
Well, I think this is an appropriate time. Thank you. I think this is an appropriate time to give a quick rundown on our activities here. Yes, Saturday. We had our Earth Day event. We had a very good turnout. I see some folks who were here sitting out there. I think we had about 22 people. Is that what our number was? 22 people here. We had a very good presentation from Fern Hollow. And when we went out to pick up trash on the roadway, we picked up 44 bags between Deer Run Road and the Ridge. And then we picked up 20 tires between Deer Run Road and the Ridge, which was significantly increased from last year. So 20 tires, a car battery, a ton of just sort of bulk scrap metal that we found floating around out there. Rebar. An old dead muffler. It was a good day. The weather was real nice, and I think we got a lot of stuff up. So thanks to Tim and Tom, they were helpful as always. Thanks to Gwen. Thanks to George and everybody who helped out organizing. I thought it was a great day.
Well done.
All right. Communications, I have no report. Planning and zoning. I don't think this is the right place to say it, but I'm going to say it here anyhow because I think other commissioners are entitled to an update about the enforcement action that's going on with respect to St. Mary's.
Oh, sure. There was a light complaint from the neighbors surrounding St. Mary's Church. And so our code enforcement has been working with the church and notifying them, trying to get them to change and notifying them that it's a viable violation. And so they are promising that this week they're going to have their electrical company come out and install light shields on all the lights so that it doesn't come off of their property, it stays on their property.
So procedurally, that the complaint started in December, right? We started getting complaints in December from the adjacent resident. And notice of violation was issued 35 days ago. It gave them 30 days to cure.
But there were conversations in between trying to work.
Right. But formally speaking,
a
letter went out 35 or 36 days ago asking for them to cure it. It didn't get cured. And so now another letter has gone out saying you have 5 business days to give us good faith efforts of cure. Or we're going to send it to the magistrate. So that's where it is. Okay, tax collector.
Good evening, all. So it's been a while since I've been here, but you should have 2 months worth of reporting. For the record, the month of February, we collected $27,902.26 in total taxes. For the month of March, we collected $73,407.16. I'll kind of go through the account totals for the month of March. You have the full quarter in your packet there. Right now, the PNC checking account, you have $296,831.55. State Farm, $91,690.25. General investment, $760,051.50. The reserve fund, $105,036.87. Then the capital improvement fund, we have $646,500.97. So when you add all that up, total monies on hand is $1,900,111.14. However, you always have to take out the pledged funds and the targeted funds. And so when you take those out, you have net operating funds of $1,056,883.05. In February, the PNC checking account has a Masonic pilot that was deposited in there. We also had to take money out of the state fund in February to pay a salt invoice, which is obviously behind right now. And then I just wanted to point out, in January, the report I gave you, the reason I wrote it correction down at the bottom, there was a typo in the realty transfer tax. I had originally reported $2,025, and it should be $2,205. So we need to on the report is the correct amount. Okay. If you go to the second page of that report, it gives you year-to-date totals right now compared to budget. Obviously, if you're still in the first quarter, you still have a lot of tax months to go. So you can go through that. The next report of the bar graphs comparing February's numbers, 2018 to 2017. Again, year-to-date to budget. And then the last two pages are March numbers, which is where we currently are right now. So again, this is March 2018 compared to March of 2017. A little bit of a difference. The year-to-date budget, 2018 numbers right now, and then the other numbers which are kind of comparing 2017 to 2018. So, any questions?
Real quick.
Yeah.
On the March 18 to March 17, the two big variances are property tax and other income tax. Do you know why?
That I do not know offhand.
It's a matter of when the property tax, and then not worry. Our billing goes out March 1st, and the bulk of our property taxes are paid by people that know what it is, and so the more stuff goes away.
Right.
I don't know why.
And the earned income tax might just be a calendar event. Okay. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's why we keep.
Right. Good.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you again. All right, at I on the agenda, there's a motion I'll entertain, please.
I move to approve March bill list in the amount of $26,416.44, to ratify March prepaid bills in the amount of $14,039.43, and to ratify March payroll transfers in the amount of $16,080.65. Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Aleppo Township Authority. QB-COG, I have no report. Ambulance Authority. QB-COG, no, I should say that at the April meeting, we're going to be voting on the new bylaws. So if anybody has comments on those, we need to see by the. We circulated, that's correct. Yep. Okay, I'm sorry. Ambulance Authority. Solicitor.
No.
Old business. Motion to enter into an agreement with OnSolve LLC for a one-year subscription to the Code Red emergency notification system for a base price of $1,380 plus setup not to exceed $750. This motion was made and seconded last week. It does not require a second at this time. However, I'll open the floor to any further discussion. Hearing no further discussion, we're going to turn to a motion on the motion itself. So if you vote yes, you're voting to approve the contract. If you vote no, you're voting not to approve the contract. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you all. Next is road 2018 road paving cost estimates. We got it.
Yes.
Thanks.
So we're working on the road paving project, and are looking, I guess, for permission to bid. We're looking at Swiftly Heights Drive, and walked the site, made some suggestions on island adjustments and also throat adjustments on the driveways. I call them driveways with more access to the parking. That I think is causing some of the areas of shoulder damage, island damage from the cars turning, or just inadequate turning radius. We've prepared a couple plans. I think they're up on the website or in the hallway. Just kind of showing what's going on. What you have in front of you is the cost estimate to complete that work, as well as an ad that the township was looking at, Shipping Roads Avenue. I think that one's going to probably be more of a reach, just to see how the prices man. With the main focus being on Woods Heights Drive. But you can see the two prices there. These prices are conservative unit costs. Lately, we've seen bidding coming in lower than this, significantly lower. However, this project is a little bit of tricky parts to it because of one way in and one way out of access. So the road's going to have to be at least passable at the end of the day. Question that we would have is compacted stone in a temporary condition, week or so, acceptable as long as it's maintained daily, or does it need to be paved, some sort of pavement at the end of each working day, which is going to increase your costs. We did meet with the contractor last week just to make sure we weren't missing something. Our traffic control plan was going to work. They were on board with everything, but did want to, I guess, reiterate that if they were to have to pave in little pieces, that is going to increase costs. They would ultimately like to remove the road and get it back to a compacted stone base and then do their paving in one continuous motion. I think it gives better surface for sure, and also allows them only to deal with one type of material a day in trucking. So that was their suggestion. We were looking to open bids on May 7th if we were to advertise after tonight. And that would allow us to have bids prior to the next legislative meeting on the 21st. You guys would have hard numbers.
Just one real quickie.
Yes.
Can you look at this if you don't have it with you?
Yes.
Can you just comment on the comparison of this guesstimate and the guesstimate in the road study?
Sure.
Maybe first by telling the rest of the commissioners what the two numbers are.
Okay.
What was the old bid, just lump sum? What was the old estimate?
Yeah, that's what we're.
The roadway management plan estimate was $481,441. That also included some drainage improvements, I believe. Again, we're coming in at about $353,000 is our estimate. So I think we're within the overall plan. However, we weren't not doing any drainage improvements. We're doing some island adjustments, some throat adjustments, which had some more paving material to make all of that tie-in smooth. We've also included construction surveying so that they can maintain the existing grade, make sure everything were drained back to the way it drains now. So to go, I guess, even a step further back, if you recall last month's meeting, we had some core samples done. And part of the reason the road's in the condition it's in is there's some pavement, as well as some substandard material underneath. The aggregate doesn't drain real well, which I think is causing the water to be trapped in there, making the earth underneath soft and causing it to move, hence the cracking. So that's why we're looking at the approach of the whole reconstruction, try to get that bad material out, get it down deep, and bring it up with a usable final surface, similar to what we did on Overlook Drive. Questions, comments?
Regarding the traffic plan, are we working with the manor on, are we gonna use just the main road, or are we gonna be able to use some of those, the manor roads for any of that?
We are looking to use the existing township road only with the flagging conditions. So the one-way traffic will become two-way with flaggers. So while they're working on the in route, the traffic will have to go in, be out, but on a flag condition, and then it'll be open at the end of each night in a temporary condition. So there's no two-way traffic without flaggers.
Gotcha.
And so the bid here just says Swickley Heights Manor. I take it that's only Swickley Heights Drive, correct?
Correct.
Although I do think Gwen would advise Ben on a separate contract, of course, the manor has asked if we would consider allowing them to use the contractor for this major event to help repave some of the guest parking.
And we can help facilitate that discussion. Obviously, I think it's beneficial for the township not to get into that negotiation, and it's also beneficial to the homeowners association because they may be able to negotiate a rate without prevailing wage, which might save them some additional money. But what we would like to do is wait till we get the apparent low bidder, who the contractor would be, and we can provide that contact information over.
I did have a question from a resident, the big circle where you come in, there is a parking lot there, and they were asking, because it sits between, you know, that middle road where the circle is where it splits. I'm assuming that's manor property, that circle in the middle, and the parking lot on both sides by the little book thing. That is manor, right? Those lots.
I
That's
believe
not
it-
in our right of way.
It is not in your right of way.
Okay.
We can, I don't believe we have it in the bid. We were just doing the road. If that's something,
The resident asked to pave the one on the, which direction is that, on the outgoing, there's a parking lot on the outbound section that's kind of deteriorated, and they said, can you pave that too? And I said, I'm not sure if that's Manners or ours, so I just want to clarify.
it'd be my recommendation to only do work on the property that you own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not, so that's what I was trying to.
That would be my recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For other
I'm just
reasons.
trying to make sure that lot is not on the right of way, so.
That being said, we will have a pre-construction conference and we'll be providing the manor staff contact with our contractor as well. So if they want to broker a deal and get that paved while they're going by it, then they can do such. But we're not showing it as being paved on our plan.
Yeah, I told him it was the Manners, I thought, so I just want to clarify, make sure that's correct, so thank you.
And so we're talking about starting at the road that goes down to the ridge
Intersection there.
and going all the way to the back
Correct.
on both sides.
And they loop through everything in, obviously in the middle between the islands. And then as the driveways tie in, even with widening some of the roads there, they're just narrow and the turning radius, the trucks go off the edges.
So when you said you spoke with somebody,
Yes.
you said you spoke with a contractor?
Yes.
But it's not been bid, so
No.
you just spoke with some random contractor?
Yeah, well, we spoke to the contractor who did this last year.
I got you.
Check.
Young blood? So do you need anything from us tonight, or is this just for our
I
information?
think I'm looking for a blessing to actually bid the contract, advertise it and bid it. That's what we're ready to do.
Did you, was that question about gravel versus paving, was that a question that you needed them to answer, or was that just?
No, just for my background.
So if we get this road done, should it last this time? We do
It
it
should.
right,
It should last this time.
what's kind of lifespan?
Again, I typically say 20 to 30, depending on the maintenance.
Commissioner, part of the discovery was that this was paved in 2007.
I know.
So it's only 11 years. And again, as we stated before, part of the issue was there just wasn't a budget to do it prior. So it was done the best that could be done at
Based
that
on
time.
limited, okay. It
But this
wasn't,
time we want it to be done correctly.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. And I think some of the issue was not even that project, but maybe original construction.
Yeah.
So it might have not been done properly.
Because there wasn't significant pavement, and this is what we typically see on a road.
I have to say that HRG did a wonderful job on Overlook and did make improvements in their original specifications. So I anticipate getting improvement over specifications this time too.
Move that HRG be authorized to proceed to solicit bids for the 2018 road program.
Second.
The motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our agenda lists some motions with respect to the Masonic Village application, although I assume that they're not ripe, and we don't even need to move them. Just take them off the agenda, you put them on the agenda for next time, please. Thank you. Okay, new business, donation to Swiftwood Memorial Day Committee.
I got the annual request, and last year there had been conversation about increasing it a very small amount of the potential in the past, it was up to $250 contribution last year, so that they asked again, and what the board wanted to do our contribution this year.
We went from a token 100 to 250? 50 to 250.
What's your total budget?
What's their total budget?
Good luck finding that out.
Yeah, right. That's why I asked the person who probably would know if anybody did.
Well, this letter doesn't have any deadline, does it?
I don't.
For Memorial
Day?
Why don't you let me talk to Mayor Jaffe? And let me just see if I can get a sense of what their budget is. I know we got some sense last year about what some other municipalities were contributing, but let me just try to bend his ear about it.
Sure. Would you like it on the workshop agenda for May?
Yes, please.
I have a, old business, and I don't know if it's new business, old business, I just want to see what the status is on the lot with Osborne storage lot, where we're at on that.
Wasn't there a June 30 commitment to be out of there?
There was a commitment that by June 30th, 2018, the lot, they would be out of there, and the lot would be clear.
Is there new material on that?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought, that's why I brought it up. So they can still use it up to June. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other new business? Does anybody have any other old business? Okay. Okay. Citizen participation. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Art Capuzzi with the road. I tried first of all, I'm very pleased to hear that you're taking 45 days or whatever, work that head a little bit. And all those numbers run back and forth. Write a check.
Well, he told us 1 million.
Okay. And do we have an anti-Jacob braking system ordinance in this township? The Jake brake law? We don't. All right. Thank you.
Okay. That was easy.
Well, next meeting I'll have a complaint about the Jake brake. Because it is quite annoying. It's quite annoying.
You're hearing them? Where are you hearing them?
Well, they're coming down off the new construction up above on Weber, and they ride that brake all the ways down to the fire hall. And I guess my other question is, do they post a bond for road damage on the weight that they're bringing up on the trucks? And what's our road rated for? Is it rated for triaxle? Maximum tonnage?
Not in the developer agreement?
Yes, so the township does not have a road bonding ordinance. We've discussed that, I think, many times here. That project, the developer is bonded in a road, similar type to a road bond through the developers. So we have gone out, done a pre-construction inspection with video, and after construction, we'll also do a post-construction inspection with video. And if there's damage in excess of normal maintenance, it'll be addressed similar to a road bond type agreement.
Should we have a road bond ordinance?
jeez.
That's a question. That's it.
Thank you.
Let's talk about deer. Let's talk about speeding. What else? What are all?
Feral cats.
Yeah.
How about chickens?
All right. I don't mean to get. Anybody else have anything that they want to talk about? Yes, sir. Deer.
Call me a deer. Chris Sherman, 1255 Barrington Road. What was this, last Saturday, we moved doing a cleanup. We did a PNC park for the cars, 5K. Got back in time, did a quick run through, was doing the Morgantown Marathon. It was a great turnout, everybody that came to the township. Unfortunately, every year you guys have it, the fires had the 5K. So I couldn't actually come down and help. And when I got back in time, looked on and didn't have enough time. And it was just nice to see how many people come out and the younger generation too, cleaning up and everything like that. So, you know, hats go off to the people that actually took the time out on a nice, you know, Western Pennsylvania day to come out and clean, you know, the township. And hopefully we'll start, after a while, people start seeing the township being clean, that they'll quit throwing garbage up the window. You know, it's just, I can see the tires over there in the morning, and it's just massive, just the tires, how many, you know, come through the neighborhood and everything like that. But like I said, I appreciate the people that come out that day, and wish I actually had the opportunity.
We'll get you next year.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah.
You gotta tell someone to run the tires.
Well, that's a good thing to be doing too.
Thanks.
Anybody else? All right, folks. Thanks for coming out tonight. We're adjourned.